Great. And then let's see. If not, share it with me through email. Okay, and I will just like, because I don't know, video general.
You have already been forwarded it to you. So
you have the presentation, Oscar.
On your email, on your box mail.
Here it is. Perfect. Okay, I will share it. Just let me see if it works. Okay, I think it's working. Just hold on. Hold on. Okay, you just need to tell me to pass the slide and that's all. Okay?
Cool.
Okay, please hold on. So thank you so much, Susana Ruíz, Iñigo Macías. I think this is maybe the 4th year you are in this course, and I really appreciate your time because I know that you are so busy, but it's always a very stimulating and fascinating session in which we can really learn from the experience of such an important international development NGO like Oxfam in the work that you are doing in all these last years in terms of tax policies. Susana Ruíz is the tax, I hope I will say it well, is the tax policy leader of Oxfam, right? You are the head of the Department of Tax Policy or Tax Justice, if I'm not wrong. And she has an amazing experience internationally in dealing with many different actors, OECD, G20, representing the voice of Oxfam, which has a very clear position, no, about these particular aspects that have to do with global financial governance. And at the same time, Iñigo Macías, very happy also to see you again. Iñigo is the head of the research department at Oxfam, and he's also very much involved in different negotiations and different processes that have to do with tax policy and tax justice. He has also a very amazing experience in the field of development and other type of fields like tax policy and so on and so forth. I really welcome you in this class. I'm very happy that you both are here again, you're back. Please, if you need to introduce something else about your background that the students need to know whatsoever, feel free. And then the idea of today was you suggested this year to tackle one of the aspects in which you have been especially devoted, which is the global agreement on corporate taxation. Okay, and I think the main idea, and that's why it's so successful, is because in a course like global governance, we try to assess the role of different actors in dealing with different global transboundary problems like security, health, whatsoever. And I think it's a very stimulating possibility to listen to the position of one very important non-state actor, an NGO like Oxfam, how it handles the very complex scenario of negotiating with actors that have, for sure, a lot of power in terms of leverage and in terms of negotiation, but that you have the possibility also to influence and to lobby from your perspective and with your position, some of the outcomes and the type of like resolutions that have to do with all this field. Thank you so much again, Susana, Iñigo, the floor is yours. I will be passing your slides, okay? You just let me know when I have to pass like the slides. The floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. So, well, first of all, what are we going to talk about? I mean, we're going to show you what are the different issues related to corporate taxation that we've been working for the last year and a half. Can you hear me well? Yeah, is it okay?
Perfectly, very
Okay.
well.
So, and if you could pass the slide, please, the next one, Oscar.
Yes.
And so basically, I'm gonna speak first, but then so as I was telling you, I mean, the idea of this session is to explain you a little bit what are the topics that we are talking about when it comes to taxation, and more concretely on corporate taxation. But also we would like to show you how we do things and the kind of things that we do at Oxfam at the international level, at the national level, right? So first of all, just let me know, I'm gonna talk a little bit about a problem. So basically we are an organization, Oxfam, and all the different affiliates that you can find in different countries, or the country programs that they have that you can find in different countries all over the world, that we are worried about inequality because we do think that we need to fight inequality to defeat poverty. And so in this first chart, what you can see in here is that basically what's been we're really worried about wealth inequality, and we are really worried about how much of the wealth that is being created for the last few years have ended up in the hands of the few. So in this first chart, what you can see in here is that the bottom 50% of the population captured just 2% of the global wealth growth. On the other hand, what you can see on the other extreme, on the right side of the chart, is that the top 1% capture almost 40% of this global wealth growth. Could you press next, Oscar, please?
Yeah.
And then, but this is something that we've seen for years, because I mean, the first chart referred to the period between 1995 to 2021. And that was an issue that we were seeing and we were complaining about, and we were trying to promote policies that could create a fair societies. But then the pandemics came in, and then we saw that also with the pandemics we saw winners and losers. And in here it's just we can summarize this, that the wealth of the 10 richest people in the world doubled, while poverty all around the world was increasing, right? So we saw that the pandemic was affecting people in a different way, and then the wealthier, they were getting even more wealth. Could you press next, please? And so basically, I mean, we were in an unequal world when it comes to wealth, but also the pandemics came in, so more inequality. And what we are experiencing now is a sort of what is being called this sort of situation of a polycrisis, which is basically the increasing cost of living. We've seen the increasing price of food, inflation. We are seeing the shadows of austerity and another debt crisis coming. We see climate change accelerating, and then its effects affecting probably most those more in the poorest people in the world. And we also saw that because of the pandemics, an unprecedented rise in poverty. Could you please press next? And so, I mean, there are different ways to tackle inequality, but definitely one of the measures that we have at hand is basically the tax system. And we also try to analyze what's the situation on the tax system, and we come to the conclusion that it is an unfair tax system. In this chart, what you can see in here is basically considering almost 100 countries all around the world, what's the percentage of all the tax revenues that governments get? What we can see is that basically we are not taxing properly corporate income taxes, we are not taxing properly wealth, whereas the great majority, the lion's share of the tax income that governments get, they basically come from households. They come from the personal income tax, they come from indirect taxation, the VAT, so on and so forth. So that's why we focus, and that's why we devote so much time to work on taxation, and especially on international taxation. Could you please press next? The next one. Susana, can you come in?
Yeah. So the reason what we wanted to show is not only that there is the potential to increase revenue collection, but who should be contributing more. So in terms of the wealthiest, but also incorporate the large company. And we wanted to show, and that's what we have been doing at the core of our work over the past 6-7 years, is to show that companies, even if they are increasing their profits, they are contributing less. So what you see on the graph on my right is that corporate profits have been growing more than 2 times faster than global GDP. And at the same time, on the left, what you see is that they have been paying less in tax collection, in corporate income tax. So they are growing bigger and bigger, but they are contributing less and less. So why is this happening? Because at the same time, and that's also one of the reasons for us to be working on wealth inequality. Wealth inequality means power and means the capacity to influence on how decisions and startups are made. And corporates, large companies have a big part of this power. So next. So one of the reasons why those large companies are paying less or not paying enough on the corporate income tax is because they are using very largely tax havens to artificially shift their profits to some of those territories. So what you have on the left is a graph from Gabriel Zucman, one of the most recognized economists working on tax and especially on tax haven. And what he's been finding is that around 40 to 45% of international profits by large companies are located in tax haven. And among those tax havens, mainly the European ones. So it's not only about the Caribbean island and Switzerland, Singapore. It's true, it's happening. So those are some of the most aggressive territories, but it's also about Ireland, it's about Netherlands, Luxembourg, and some other territories just at the heart of the European Union. So that's the finding from Gabriel Zucman, and it's pretty much what the IMF also has been saying. So the IMF was launching a research a couple of years ago, just before the pandemic, where they were finding and close to 40% of global investment was going through one of those tax aggressive territories. And it's mainly the same territories named by Gabriel Zucman. Those Oxfam has been identifying also as some of the most aggressive, Ireland, Netherlands, Luxembourg, and some others like British Virgin Island or Singapore. But again, what the IMF calls phantom investment, this is creating an artificial economy that is having a very negative spillover effect on the rest of the economy. Next. And that's how some of those large companies are creating a mismatch on where they are doing profits and where they are locating their profits and where they are paying, how much taxes they are paying. So what we have on the right is the official data by the U.S. Treasury, the IRS, and what they are showing is that basically large U.S. companies are essentially locating their profits in small territories like Cayman Islands, Singapore, Switzerland, or Netherlands, much more than in the big countries where they have the real operations like China, Brazil, or the European Union countries. So it's a mismatch on where they are doing the real, creating the real value and creating having the real operations compared to where they are, which territories they are locating those profits. Next. So all this is nothing new, but it was taking a biggest dimension, scaling up very quickly with the digitalization of the economy. So this is just an example on how Google is operating. So when we were talking about this mismatch, with the example of Google, it's very easy to understand. Google is locating the internet users mainly in territories on scale to the population in Spain, in Germany, on the left, so in blue. But it's nothing to see where the countries where the company is recording most of their profits and the revenue, which is Ireland mainly, where this gap between the population of Ireland and the level of revenue and profits they are recording in this territory. So what is happening with this digitalization of the economy is an explosion of the use of some territories to locate some activities that are low intensive in terms of real premises or real stuff, but it's high in terms of intangibles, all the brands, royalties, and so on. Next. Maybe the easiest example is how Uber is using those territories. So what was happening with the design of the international tax system, which was created 100 years ago and has changed very little since then, and it's not just a metaphor, it's the reality that the international tax system has almost no change, experienced almost no changes over the past 100 years. It was created, it was designed to pay taxes where the company was having the activity. But what has been happening is that over the years with the gig economy, you can have companies like Uber, but Uber and many others, operating and having some real transactions in a country without being in the country for tax purposes. So Uber has is locating all the operations in Luxembourg or Netherlands, but when you are taking you're using Uber in any other countries where you will be taking the car, the company, it's you paying the driver, but the money is directly transferred to tax haven, and only a small percentage of this of the price you're paying is really remaining in the country to the driver. So that's how, in fact, you are having a transaction in a country, but most of the profit is artificially and automatically shifted outside the country. And what happens with the tax system? I mean, any of the revenue authorities has any idea of how to tax a company that doesn't exist for tax purposes inside the country. They don't exist. It's a phantom. It's a ghost for the revenue authority. You can see the company. You can see any of those companies operating, delivering, but you cannot tax them because they simply don't exist for tax purposes in the country. Next. So what the international community needed to do is to find a way to tax those companies. In a way, it's how to reinvent the international tax system, not for the black and mortar industry, but for an industry that is a system, a business model that is completely changing, that is taking a scale that was not even in the imagination of those who were thinking the international tax system 100 years ago, and they need to reinvent it, to think it about. And they need to reinvent in a way that it's addressing this digitalization of the economy, and it's also addressing the reality that more and more of those profits are artificially shifted to tax havens, and because of that, countries are put at competing one each other to lower their corporate income tax rates or to offer more tax incentives to attract artificially these investors. So what is happening is that all the role of those tax havens and accelerating with the digitalization of economy is creating what is called the race to the bottom. It's a way to put countries that competing one each other, and when those countries are competing, the only winners are the large companies because they will be paying less and less revenues. So the international community, the G20 mandated the OECD, so this body, the largest economies in the planet are sitting, to redesign and to reinvent this international tax system. And that's what was called the BEPS process, the base erosion and profit shifting. Don't worry about that. It's a technicality to say that how can we address this artificial system by creating two new solutions. One is to tax the companies on their global profits and then to reallocate to the different countries. And the other is to create a minimum tax. It's a floor. So if the recognition by the consensus at the global level is that companies are not paying enough and not paying where they are having the real economy, then what we are going to say is that, okay, so those countries will need to be paying a minimum tax of 50% in every country where those companies are having the operation. So it's a quite interesting approach because it's breaking up completely the design of the international system and rethinking to the reality of the 21st century. But lots of discussion on technicalities. It's the political agenda that is dominating. We at Oxfam have been very, very active in creating, in trying to influence this process in different ways. One is to increase the level of ambition. So we wanted to see not 15%, but 25% as a minimum tax. We failed, obviously. But the idea of the minimum tax was something we were putting very strongly on the agenda already. And the second is that we didn't want it to have only rich countries around the table. We wanted a decision that had to be made with most of countries around the table, because this is a decision. This international tax system will influence absolutely every country in the planet and every multinational in the planet. So what we influence is how those decisions will have to be made, the governance of those decisions. And that's how the OECD created what they call the inclusive framework. It's a body inside the OECD where you have at this moment 140 countries sitting around the table to make the decision. And that has made possible that part of the decision are a bit more inclusive, are a bit more ambitious, and are a bit more fit for the reality of the different countries and not just responding to the interest of the big economies. But multilateralism is not at the best moment. And the reality is that this is facing the challenges of decisions by these rich countries. And it's at this moment it's blocked at the European level, and it's blocked a little bit in the US. So we'll see now with the midterm election in the US if something will move ahead, and we'll see on 6 December if the country that is blocking at the European level, Hungary, will finally lift the veto and will have this minimum tax approved at the European level too. And as Oxfam, we have been engaging with many countries. We've been following the discussion very closely. We've been engaging with the G20, with the OECD Secretariat, and with the countries that have been more active in the process to just make this process much more fair. Iñigo, now for you.
Yeah, could you next, please? So basically, what Susana has been explaining you is basically one example of something that we could call this is a medium long-term agenda that we've been working on. It refers to corporate taxation. This is something that we knew negotiations were going on, were coming. We had to prepare our position. We were helping, as Susana was saying, supporting basically developing countries because they were sitting in the table, and we were helping them in the negotiations. But then suddenly the pandemics came in, and we started analyzing what was going on, right? And then we saw basically that some corporations were getting even more profits. And so we started analyzing what was going on, and then we saw that basically people were losing jobs. People were, for those countries where there were not furlough schemes and things like that, people were losing jobs. People had to stay at home. But at the same time, we saw that some companies, specifically pharmaceutical companies, but also those companies related to digital leisure, like most of you might know, they were getting super profits. Right, and so we suddenly, we start changing the agenda because we were seeing people in the world suffering a lot from the pandemics, but at the same time we saw those at the top, the Forbes billionaire people getting richer. We saw some companies in the world making lots of money. Next, please. So we started analyzing that, and then we came out with this idea of, like, I don't know if you have heard about, but this idea of the windfall profits. So we started saying that, come on, there are some companies that are making a lot of money. This is not because they have taken any special decision, but it's because of the distortions that the pandemics was creating in the markets. We couldn't go out. We had to consume from home. Pharmaceuticals had all the intellectual property of all the medicines that we had to take. They were even supported with public money. So we came out with this idea of, like, somebody has to pay with. Governments all these furlough schemes, all these health expenses that we had to make to confront the pandemics, I mean, they have to come from somewhere else. And then we saw that at the same time, I mean, governments were increasing their debts, but some companies, they were making even more profits. So we came out with this idea of like windfall profits. Let's propose a windfall profit tax. And first we had to think about what was a profit tax, what was a windfall profit, which we start talking, we start publishing articles, we started giving speeches about what we thought extraordinary windfall profits were. These were excess profits when they exceed the normal market profitability levels in a context of crisis in which a significant part of the population at the same time has to face these negative consequences. This was happening during the pandemics, but at the same time we are seeing this happening again because of the Ukraine war. Next, please. So this, we thought that it was a solution.
Can just let me say something. Sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
So what I just wanted to say that we as Oxfam, we were one of the pioneers reusing the idea of the windfall profits. It's not something new because it was used in war times and at different moments. But we reactivated the plan as part of the solution in the pandemic, and we failed during the pandemic. We failed because, in fact, what we wanted, one of the business where most of the profits, those windfall profits were happening, was the pharma industry. And at that time, even if the recognition by different countries and bodies, international bodies, recognizing the increasing profit by the pharma companies, I mean, as you can imagine, everybody was more concerned about making sure that vaccines were going to be delivered than taxing those companies. So we, in a way, we managed to put that on the agenda or to contribute to the discussion that were on the table. We changed part of the terms of the public perception, but we failed. But that helped a lot on what is happening now and what is Iñigo going to explain.
Yeah, so this is the idea, right? So we during the pandemics, we tried to put, I mean, as you can imagine, people were telling that we were crazy, that we were an organization, that we should be much more worried about the poor, and not basically saying what possible solutions we could have to confront the pandemics. But then basically after this year and a half, then we had the Ukraine war, we had inflation. And then we basically recovered this idea, saying, "Come on, guys, there is a crisis going on, and again, some people are making a lot of money." And so we basically took back this idea, and then we start working on that idea. And then we have worked at the different, basically two playgrounds, basically at the global level, but also at the national level. So, and as you can see in here, for example, is basically, what did we do? Basically, we start analyzing where we could find these windfall profits. And in this chart, for example, you can see what were the windfall profits from the nuclear and the hydroelectric energy production companies in Spain. So basically, our first idea was to portray what was going on and whether they were extraordinary, whether their profits where they were windfall profits. Next, please. Next, Oscar. Yeah, but and then what we have in here is that an idea that initially failed, an idea that initially people thought that we were crazy, and as Susana was saying, this wasn't something. This wasn't anything new. I mean, it was something that it was used during the Second World War. But what we have now, we have, and in this chart you can see in here, the different proposals from different European countries to tax these windfall profits. In each country, you have a different design, but in the end, an initial idea that it was prone to fail, and an idea that it was thought to be crazy. What we have 2 years later, 2.5 years later, we have each country proposing its own windfall profit tax design. Next, please. This is at the national level, but we also have a proposal from the EU. I mean, it has different characteristics, but it's basically talking about the idea of fossil fuel companies making a lot of money because basically prices are so high, but the costs of production are basically the same. So these companies are making a lot of money, and even the European Union, the European Commission has proposed this idea of taxing these extraordinary profits that these companies are making. Next, please. And not only, and just to show you how these ideas that they are beginning, that we deem them as a failure idea. And now we even have the International Monetary Fund, which is not an organization that is being considered. That, I mean, they basically don't like to tax too many things. So we had, I mean, late this year, I mean, we had the International Monetary Fund even showing the proposal. They were talking not only about a temporary windfall profit tax for those companies making windfall profits at a specific moment in time, but they were even considering to have it at a permanent level. Next, please. And then finally, what we have in here is basically our proposal. I mean, every time we discuss all these issues at the national level in each different country with our colleagues, we work with our colleagues in Italy, we work with our colleagues in Kenya, we work with our colleagues anywhere in any country that we are that we have that we have presence. We have our own proposals. This is a basically general proposal that it basically it is very very ambitious because we know that we have to play hard because I mean, whenever it comes to all these proposals have to be translated at the national level. I mean, you have to be ambitious. And in here, for example, you can see what's our own proposal that we try to tailor for each country. Next, please. And so this is basically, I mean, these are two examples of what we've been doing for the last 2 years when it comes to corporate taxation. But also we want to show you basically, I mean, this is and this is a chart, or this is a picture that most of you have seen, because this is basically the steps that we are following. We are basically analyzing what's the impact of the COVID-19, but at the same time, then we are also seeing right now we are analyzing what's the recession that we are going to see. We are trying to analyze what's a differentiated impact in this cost of living crisis that we are living. But at the same time, we are not forgetting about the next wave that is coming and that is even bigger, which is the climate change, right? So next, please. And then finally, just let me show you, I mean, basically how we work. How do we do these kind of issues, these kind of ideas of corporate taxation that can be very complex, that can seem to be very complex. But we basically work in two main strands of work. The first of all is just changing the national international standards. So basically, we go to whatever they let us go, just to change what are the laws. That basically we try to change the laws, but at the same time we also try to change the perceptions and the terms of the debate. If there is an issue that is not in the agenda, for example, like the windfall profit tax, we try to put it in the agenda. So it's not only to change how people think about windfall profits, but also um, how to put an issue like the windfall profit tax, how to put that in the agenda in the debate. So we try to play in these two, basically in these two spaces. But also, what we always have to do that with other CSOs. We do that with the participation of the local, of the national, and CSOs at the global level. Next, please. Oh, well, sorry. Yeah. So yeah, and other things that, so basically you might know Oxfam as an NGO that basically we do wells in some countries. We provide water and sanitation in countries where it is very very difficult to access water and sanitation. This is what we call the program delivery, that is now moving towards a much more work um, on 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 public engagement, which is basically changing the rules of those countries. But we are we are very strong at these ideas of like campaigning, doing research and advocacy, because all the work that we've been presenting you, it is basically based on, tough work in research. We need to we need to analyze the numbers. We need to understand what are the topics, but also advocacy. I mean, we have colleagues, for example, like Susana. I'm a researcher, so basically I work closely with Susana, who is in charge of basically talking to these policymakers and trying to change the making suggestions to change the laws of the countries in order to get the goals that we aim for. And we also do campaigning, and with campaigning we basically try to change the hearts and minds of the people to support the ideas that we think are the most appropriate basically to fight against inequality. And we do so basically doing policy and advocacy work, both at the national and international level. We promote public mobilization. We try to change, to shift the terms of the debate and the public perceptions. We also engage with corporates. I mean, we have, when it comes, for example, just to give you an example, we've been meeting with big oil corporations when it comes to these ideas of the win for profit tax. So we tell them our ideas, they tell us why our ideas are crazy, but it's always an engagement that we have to have with corporations, because we are in organizations that we think that um, we don't have to get rid of corporations, but we need to make them change their behavior to make sure that we are able to achieve a fairer world. Next, please. And then finally, another important issue is that we work always with others. And in here you have like three different examples. Uh, for example, we've been involved with those investigative journalist teams that they have been behind all these leaks regarding tax havens. So I don't know if you are aware of the Pandora Papers, of the Paradise Papers, all those leaks that they provide us with information to assess exactly what's going on in tax havens. We work with an alliance at the global level with presence in hundreds of countries, which is called the Fight Inequality Alliance. So that give us the possibility to better understand what's going on in different countries where we don't have presence, but also at the same time it allows us to move our messages further. And also the International Commission for the Reform, the International Corporate Taxation, which is an organization uh, that is formed by super well-known economists at the global level, and we basically work with these people like Joseph Stiglitz and many others that help. They basically they act as a spokesperson, and they basically, so we work with them to define and be able to design, for example, what we think about should be the most appropriate windfall profit tax. But at the same time, these are people that they are being listened, and so for us, it is really helpful to make our messages move further beyond. And finally, next, please. And then just two examples, two specific examples. On the left, what you can see in here, it is basically this is an initiative that we have in Spain, for example, which is called Politica. What we do with this is basically analyze when it comes to elections. This is something that we are going to work again probably next year, because you might know that next year we will have national general elections here in Spain. We analyze basically what are the programs of the different political parties. So we analyze those programs with other civil society organizations according to different topics that we are all interested. We talk about development, we talk about what the security policy they are proposing, what is the migration policy they are proposing, and we analyze not only their programs, what they are proposing, but also what they are saying about that. And we basically, for the 4 weeks or the 3 weeks that we have the election campaigns, we measure every word they say, we analyze what they say, and then we assess what they are saying compared to our objectives. And that's basically, so the idea is to give the people the power, or to give the people the necessary information to vote, to decide, to have to decide which political party should govern. And then on the right side, I mean, you have an example. For example, this is an event that Susana was involved, and there was a recent event that it took place in the last big annual meeting that the IMF and the World Bank had last month, last October in Washington D.C. And so basically, that was, for example, that was an issue. That was an event that we organized with very well-known economists, with the ministries of the econ ministries of different countries, from Chile, from Colombia, and they basically, because I mean, these are countries that they are supporting these tax reforms, especially on the windfall profit taxation. And so these are the kind of events that help us to be in the media, to change the terms of debate, and to put like these issues on the debate that we think they are not right now in the agenda. And I think the last one, and that's it. I don't know, Susana, if I missed anything. Let's jump
No,
in.
but this is an example also of something we have been doing. When we were fighting for the when we wanted the European Union to have a European blacklist of tax havens, what we did to attract the attention is not only to draft papers and research documents, so it's well-informed details of how those aggressive jurisdictions are operating and why they should be blacklisted. What we did simply is to organize, to create artificially tax haven in front of the European Parliament in Brussels and invite all the media. So now very often when you see the media talking about tax havens, European blacklist of tax haven, they use still some of the pictures of this event where we brought sun, palm trees, and some of the colleagues to have a little bit of fun, but also to use a different language to attract the media and show the need, the urgency in building this blacklist. And here we were successful. We had a European blacklist, and it was part also of the work we have been doing, engaging at the European level. That's it.
Well, thank you so much. First of all, let us give you a round of applause. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you so much for such a clear presentation of not just of the particular role that you have in global financial governance with these issues that you were carefully explaining, but also to help us to understand the broader role that an organization like Oxfam might have in terms of lobbying and in terms of influencing the political debate. What we are going to do, I will give the students in pairs to come up with at least 2 questions. Okay, I will give them 4 or 5 minutes for them to prepare from all what you have been explaining, a couple of questions that they will raise to you in the next minutes. We will take few questions and we will go back to you. Is that okay? Yes. So you have 4 or 5 minutes with the person that you have next to you to prepare at least 2 questions that you want to raise to Susana and Iñigo. Go ahead. One more minute. Is everyone ready? No? 1 more minute? Okay. Okay. Please raise your hand, and probably you will have to speak very loud, please, for them to listen to you properly. We have a couple of questions. We'll take a first round of 3 questions, if you don't mind, and then we'll go back to you, and then we'll do a second round or a third round if it's necessary. Gabriel, you will have to speak loud, okay?
Just one. One of the questions.
Just one. Take one.
How do you avoid situation of double taxation? Because that is something that is normally.
Do you listen or not? Yes?
That is something that is normally resolved through bilateral treaties, but this is almost an attempt to be an almost universal system. How would you avoid double taxation then?
You took it? One. Yes. You introduce yourself a little bit for them to take the note at least of your name.
My name is Gabriel Pretos.
Just one.
Yeah. Introduce yourself.
My name is Nacho Castro. So, yes.
Go ahead.
My question is, well, one of the 2 questions is, I would like you to expand more on which things do you want to invest these new tax revenues, because we don't know, like, these taxes, like the governments, where are they going to invest them, and how do you control the governments, like if they actually like spend these taxes like in the things that you want them to spend to spend.
Thank you. We will take the last one for this round. There are like a couple of them. No matter. Come speak, and then I'll take you for the second round. Yes.
Yes.
Introduce yourself. Speak very loud.
I'm Christian. So how do you specifically interact or / transform the objectives that you have and desires into the justice systems? So you explain you communicate with different political parties at the moment of elections, right? But how do you properly communicate with said political parties? Like which would be the process, maybe step by step, in which you manage to really make the change or like the effect desired that you want?
Did you get it? Yes. So the floor is yours to like address the 3 questions, and then we can take another like a second round of questions. Go ahead.
Maybe I can take the first one on double taxation. So it's much more easy to address double taxation because that's the big effort in the last 100 years was to avoid double taxation. So that's how double tax treaties, so negotiations between countries, have been agreed to avoid on business, on capital investment, in many ways. So even on personal taxation, there was any possibility of double taxation. What was happening was just the opposite. The reason for the first round of big negotiations under the OECD was a recognition that the double taxation mechanism, all those DTA that was implemented during decades, were turning into a double non-taxation, because there is nothing like one single double anti-double taxation mechanism or there is nothing like a global tax system. It's a multitude of national tax system and something that is kind of agreed, it's an umbrella agreed at bodies like the OECD to try to, under a soft law, to be implemented on the same way by different countries. But this soft law doesn't mean that every country is really implemented exactly in the same way. So what happens is that countries have different standards, and something that is taxed in one country is not taxed in the other country. So what business do is to be using is what is called the treaty shopping. They choose where they locate some of those profits, where they locate the investment, to try to minimize the tax contribution by even sometimes locating the investment in one country, and from that country, like a bridge, they are reinvesting in other countries. For example, the first investor in Latin America is the Netherlands. It doesn't mean at all that the Netherlands is the biggest trade counterpart of Latin America. It's just the point of origin of most of the investment, global investment, into Latin America. So that means that close to $1 in $5 of investment that is directed into to Latin America is going through the Netherlands. And the Netherlands is in no one single tax haven list in Latin America. They've been doing an amazing diplomatic work to avoid being blacklisted by any of those countries. And they've been negotiating the double tax treaties with most of those countries. So most of those investments are simply no tax at all on the investment, on the inbound and on the outbound. So the problem is not on the double taxation. The problem is more on the double non-taxation, and that was the reason of creating the first round of BEPS process at the OECD.
I will proceed with the questions Nacho posed. Where to invest? I mean, you have to consider that in the great majority of countries, you cannot define a tax and say, okay, the amount of taxes raised with the tax has to be used for this whatever social spending. I mean, this is in the great majority of countries you cannot do that. But what we do always is try to, whenever we have a proposal, when we have when we say countries, okay, you should adopt this kind of taxes, for example, this kind of windfall profit tax, then we try to estimate how much you could get with this design. And then we always offer possibilities and say, with this amount of money, you could fund this, this, and this. Of course, whenever we talk about this one profit tax, we always say that the additional resources that you could obtain with this new tax figure should be used to confront this cost of living crisis. But then also, and you were also asking about how to control. I mean, today we are talking about taxation, but with other colleagues, we talk a lot about social policies and social spending. So, I mean, of course, we not only talk about taxation, but we always at Oxfam, we always talk about how to spend this money and how countries should spend this money. For example, we are really worried about the increasing amount of money from the national budgets that in developing countries will have to be devoted to return debts. I mean, I don't know if you're aware, but developing countries are seeing an important increase in their debt levels. So the amount that each year they have to devote in their national budgets to return that debt is increasing, and this is money that is not being used to fund education or health services. And we do control, because I mean, for example, I don't know, in Spain every year we analyze. I don't know if you're aware, but every year the government has to present a budget proposal. They have to explain how they're going to spend the money they think they are going to get next year. And we do a thorough analysis, and then we tell them, okay, we think that this is not enough, we think that this is too much, or we think that you should be spending more on this and this because you said that you would put more money on this, or because the numbers say that you should devote more money on education, even to development cooperation, for example. So we also take time to control how countries spend money, And this is, I mean, I mean, you cannot understand taxation without considering how the money that you raise with taxation is being spent. I mean, we always like to talk about the two sides of the same coin. There's another third one, but it's not right now the time to talk about this third side of the coin. But I mean, you cannot talk about taxation without analyzing how the money that you are raising to taxes is being spent. And then the last question, Susana, I didn't get exactly what Christian was asking. I don't know if you got
I think
it.
he was asking what is the advocacy journey we are using to influence on political parties and to make sure that our proposals are well taken on board. Is that right, Christian?
Yes, it's correct.
So just one thing on the previous question. Our job as civil society started always historically on following the budget investment. And every time we were going to discuss with the government or with the ministry and saying you have to invest more on education, you have to invest more on health, they were saying, okay, but we don't have enough money. So we need, if you're asking me more to invest on education, then I'll have to disinvest on health. So that's how we started working on tax, because the problem sometimes is not how much of the pie you were putting on education and health. Our idea is also to say, okay, there is room to increase the pie and to make sure that we have more revenue because it's people who are not paying their fair share. So that's one part. The other is the advocacy journey. So it depends very much on how we do. So what we try to do is a traditional way for us is to have something, a strong research, thanks to Iñigo and colleagues like Iñigo, with good messages and a different way to put those messages on the public opinion. So what we try as Oxfam is to identify always a more attractive way to understand the different issues and to find a way that is creating like a media impact. We work very much, I mean, that's an Oxfam identity sign, is to work with the data, so it can create some media attention around the messages. So first is to have media impact. Why? Because once you have media impact, then you have a political attention. So especially when we are starting to be working on any different topic, what we starting creating is media attention. If you want to have political attention, first you need to make it live, any different thing. So first is for us to create that, and there are many ways for us, but our way is to create this media impact. Second, we start once we have this media attention and we make sure that the issue is there and it's on the public opinion, then we start approaching all the political parties. So we are an organization that is approaching all the political parties, or most of the political parties in the different countries. So we create, we send letters. This is very simple, but in fact, we need to send the information, what we call lobby letters. We've been sending letters for the G20 summit this week. So what we try is to put the same information in a different format and addressing all this information to the different political parties and the government. And then we try to create the opportunity for advocacy meetings, bilateral or round tables where we can discuss the issue. So those discussions can be behind the doors, bilateral, or it can be public. And it depends. Sometimes, for example, this event Iñigo was talking about at the IMF a month ago, our objective was to influence two things. One, we wanted Colombia and Chile to say to the IMF that instead of going into austerity, there were a different alternative to increase revenue by taxing the wealthiest of large corporations, looking at the tax reform they are at this moment putting in place. And second, we wanted the IMF and Stiglitz and others to say we support Chile and Colombia on the kind of reforms they are doing. Why? Because even those reforms are already on Congress and National Congress, there is a strong confrontation domestically around those issues. So to make sure that we are making those countries and those governments strong enough, we're creating this debate where we have not only Oxfam, but experts like Stiglitz and even the IMF saying we support Chile and Colombia. So that's the kind of things we do. It's not only, sometimes it's So in a way, the journey would be to create media tension, then to start this bilateral or advocacy relationship with the different political parties with more concrete or specific proposal. And third is to strengthen the direction of the proposals by using or working with others to make sure that our voice and the kind of messages that we are supporting are going to be we have good ambassadors, if you want, to those messages.
Thank you so much. Let's going to take a second round of a final round because we do not have more time. But your name was Carlos? No. Marco, could you come please here, because otherwise it will not be, I think it will not get it from there. Or someone from... A little bit close.
So our question was, what strategies is Oxfam considering to convince Hungary to lift their block on the European Union on the minimum corporate tax? So that's.
Did you get it? Can you introduce yourself?
I'm Minerva.
So just to be clear, the question is how we are convincing Hungary to lift the veto on the minimum tax discussion at the European level. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Or you have some kind of strategy or some kind of steps thought out.
Great. We're like space for two more questions. Go ahead. Your name, first of all?
Berta. So related to the use and bad practice of digitalization by corporations on tax haven, could there be a connection with the bad use of digitalization by companies on other spheres which have been worked by other Oxfam projects? Like, would there be possible like a synergy or a cooperation between this bad practice and other projects?
Is that Berta?
Did you get it?
I think I got it.
Okay. And the final question. Who wants to raise the final question? Yes. Go ahead.
I'm Nacho again. My final question would be, like, we all know that it is very difficult to apply an international tax, especially in tax havens, because they are not going to be willing to adapt this tax because they live like they're tax havens because they need this money, so they're not going to. I don't think that they're not willing to apply this tax. So, do you have any plan B, like to avoid this? Countries like avoiding to apply this tax.
Thank you very much. So the floor is yours.
Let me start with the question about Hungary. So we cannot influence Hungary directly because the reason why Hungary is vetoing the directive on the minimum tax is not because of tax, because they disagree with the directive. It's because they are negotiating, they are bargaining the European Commission on the funds they need to receive in response to the pandemic, the EU Next Generation Fund. So we can't directly influence Hungary on lifting the veto. There are things we can do. So what we are doing, we are influencing the European Commission. So if we cannot influence one of the parties in the negotiation, what we can make sure is that all the rest of parties around the table receive the pressure to say we are not going to accept this bargaining, this threatening by Hungary, because it's creating a very negative precedent. So we have been putting the pressure on the different European countries, except Hungary and except Poland, because Poland was playing the same role just before Hungary, to say this is just not acceptable, to influence the public opinion in those countries. So first, this point, to the point that 5 European countries, Spain, the Netherlands, Germany, France, and Italy, were saying that with you or without you, we are going to implement it. And we've been supporting this idea. So at some point, you don't need to influence one of the actors. What you need is to make sure that you are creating the pressure on the other side of the equation. So the third element in this equation is the European Commission. And part of the work we have been doing is through the European Parliament, through direct discussion with the European Commission, making sure that they feel the pressure also from civil society that this, I mean, if they fail in this negotiation, they would be failing to the entire European Union. I mean, all the citizens of the European Union. So sometimes what you need is to understand how much you can influence directly this country or this actor, and where you can put the pressure to influence the final outcome. So that's our role also, to understand the political dynamics behind the process. Iñigo, you want to say something?
No. I was going to say that I didn't get the second question. Sorry. The next one. I could.
It's Berta.
Yeah, I didn't get
So
that one.
Berta is having too much information on what Oxfam is doing, and she knows that we have another project on digital, on rights in the digital. So, in fact, so what she's saying is right. I mean, when at Oxfam we try not to separate the different agenda. We try not to work in silos. So when we work on taxation of digital in the digital area, we try also to connect with the work we are doing on the political character, on the role of digital actors, or the influence, or how to protect the citizens' rights in a very digitalized area. So how we try to make those connections is not always very easy, because sometimes, very often at the inception of some of those projects, we are talking the same things, but a completely different approach. But what we try is to connect those things. And for example, part of those projects she was mentioning is to identify that those big actors, those high tech giants are having such a power that they make the rules. So it's not only about, so we try not to show that it's a technical problem. We try to show that every time in a negotiation, it's about power. And those companies have the power to influence the perception, the sense that how those ideas are being negotiated. If we come with a 5 pages lobby document, they come with 500 lobbyists showing from in every language, in every country, and in very quickly, just the opposite message. So what we try is to use also the work we are doing on the same idea of the digitalization, but showing the political character some of those agents can have in influencing the rules, showing the role they are having in the room.
I mean, following on Nacho's question, I mean, you were asking how we are going to convince those countries that they are currently acting as tax havens, right? Is that the question?
More or less.
I mean, this is like, I mean, it is basically the same strategy as Susana was talking about when it comes to Hungary and whether they can accept the deal in 1 week or no, in December. So we basically, for example, with our colleagues in the Netherlands, that we know that the Netherlands, they are sort of tax havens, especially when it comes to intangibles. So our colleagues in the Netherlands, they are basically, I mean, convincing the people in the Netherlands that they are a tax haven, and then showing, I mean, what are the harms that the Netherlands are provoking in different countries, especially in developing countries. So, for example, I mean, the Netherlands, it's a country that they give a lot on international aid, but at the same time they are acting as a tax haven. So they are basically trying to convince the people in the Netherlands that their own country is acting as a tax haven, and the rules and the laws have to change. When it comes to those other tax havens that they are sitting in the Caribbean, but as I was saying, they are not the only ones. So basically, we are. I mean, they are not our target. We are targeting basically rich countries, and basically the countries where all these huge big corporations are sitting, where all these rich people I mean, when it comes to tax haven, it's not just corporation. It's also, we are talking about a lot about wealthy people, billionaires. They are being able to seed their wealth, their assets in countries, in jurisdictions that they don't cooperate with their own national tax agencies. So the tax agencies, they don't really know how much they own. So basically, we try to convince our own governments and tell them that they are losing a lot of money, that this is a huge cost of opportunity, and now it is an idea that is getting a lot of attraction because, as I said at the beginning, after the pandemics, in rich countries, basically in rich countries, we've been able to increase debt, to pay all these furlough schemes, to increase the health expenditure, and now governments are really worried about debt levels because I guess you have heard about the European Central Bank increasing interest rate, and that means that we are gonna have to pay more for our debt, even in rich countries. So we try to convince rich countries to make sure that the system, I mean, they have the power to change the rules. They have the capacities to change the rules. The G20, all those countries, I mean, most of these tiny Caribbean countries, they are closely linked to the United Kingdom, right? Probably the city of London is the most important tax haven in the world because basically all these tiny countries, they basically moving money in and out of the city of London. But basically this is our idea. I mean, when it comes to tax haven, this is our target. This is rich countries and all these international bodies like the OECD, that they've been in charge by the G20 countries, the most powerful countries in the world, to put the house in order when it comes to global corporate taxation. And I don't know, Susana, if you want to add anything else?
Yeah, just one thing. One is that every country has the choice. They are not tax haven because it's the only opportunity they have to develop an economic activity. Country like Ireland, Luxembourg, Netherlands, they have the choice to do. Even Switzerland, they all have the choice to make a different growth, to base their growth for the economy on a different activity that is not having a negative spillover effect on other countries. But it's like saying that you decide to pollute because you have no alternative. I mean, it's also a decision made by the international community not to accept or to look at different asymmetric mechanisms for those countries to be changing the system. And there was a plan, and we've been discussing, for example, with ECLAC, which is the UN Economic Commission for Latin America, on how we could be supporting some small island, Caribbean island, in their transition towards stopping being not being anymore a tax haven. So there are some plans, but it's not the same to support economy like Trinidad and Tobago, which is tax haven also. But Panama has decided not to stop being a tax haven even after the scandal of the Panama Papers. So I don't have any concern about how to support a country like Panama because they could develop their economy in a completely and radical different way. Look at Costa Rica is doing in a completely different way the sustainability and the development of the country compared to Panama. So I have no concern about that because every country that is deciding to operate as a tax haven is stealing, is robbing money from other countries. And it's the same with pollution. You can have lots of similarities in the way you understand the impact on climate change compared to tax haven. But the idea of this process at the OECD is, okay, in fact, we've been doing by many ways, we've been trying to influence those jurisdictions to stop being a tax haven. You don't want, I don't mind. I'm going to collect all the money of how much my company headquartered in my jurisdiction, but is putting their profits in your jurisdiction. If you don't collect, I will collect. And the agreement that was done by 140 countries is exactly that. If we want to stop the super aggressive tax haven, the 0% tax haven, those countries where you have 0% of corporate income tax, is by saying, you want or you don't want. You don't want to change your legislation, it's your problem. But in that case, me, the headquarters of this company, I have the right to collect the money my company has not been paying in your jurisdiction. So again, there are different ways to come to a solution. And our job is not really to find solutions for all those countries that are making the decision, the choice to be aggressive in taxation, but to find the ways for other countries to protect their revenue because they are losing revenues. I mean, when you have most of the developing countries are losing a massive amount of revenue because companies, global companies operating in those countries are investing through tax haven. So my concern is more on the impact in developing countries, on the impact in Spain also, because close to 25% of the corporate income tax revenue are missed in Spain because of the use of those tax havens. So that's our concern. How we can make sure that the value that is created in a country is staying in that country and is not shifted artificially to those developing countries, to those tax havens.
Thank you so much, really, for this fascinating conversation with you both. I think every year I learn something else, and I learn a lot from the experience of Oxfam and from your personal experience and in this particular field. Thank you so much for your time. First of all, thank you so much for sharing your practices, your engagement, and your enthusiasm, for what you are doing. So hope you can come back next year. And thank you really for the type of fascinating work that you are doing. I think we can give a final round of applause. And thank you so much. See you next year, hopefully. If not, I see you around. Take care and all the best. Okay?
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Hope it went well. Bye.